podcast is to speak about those things that is foreign to us, but when we get to know them or to approach them or to see that with the eyes of somebody else, that can seem very cool. Today we're gonna speak about yoga, about what is yoga and what is not, what yoga is not. So the host of today is my friend Lars. Can you please tell your full name and tell me a little bit about yourself?
Hmm. My name is Lars Olav Sande. Yeah, I've been a practitioner of yoga for about 10 years now.
Mm,
Um, Started with what you can call as existential crisis, where I had
mm,
to find some deeper meaning or understanding of life and why I was here, what I'm supposed to do. So I was kind of forced to start looking inside of myself rather than looking for the answers outside of myself. Like before this, I would think that fulfillment of life came with a nice car, a nice house, family, all these things that we're kind of looking for fulfillment in,
mm,
always chasing that new thing that will make us feel complete, but it's only temporary, right? So I
mm,
realized that this chase of that temporary fulfillment um, was just a waste of time. So I had to find some new ways of figuring life out. So I was starting to look within myself to find why is there maybe like a need to feel fulfilled? Why am I not feeling fulfilled already? What does it mean to be fulfilled? What does it mean to be happy? What is anxiety?
mm,
What is depression? What is stress? What is all these things that determine the quality of our life? And how can we take responsibility of that and make our life, um, our destiny, kind of craft our own destiny, our own well being? So that's how I kind of got into yoga.
Oh, that's beautiful. You basically went a little bit ahead of me. And do you have like a specific moment or something like an event that has like triggered that need of finding the sense of purpose in you or whatsoever? I remember once we were talking, you were telling me about this story that you basically did a whole trip like around Norway, just to mention that you are from Norway, right?
Mm.
And spoke about how you like went on this journey just by food and not eating very well. Do you want to tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so this was kind of what put me in this existential crisis.
Mm,
Um, I was certain things happened in my life. It didn't go as I had planned, and so I f- I felt a need to do something drastic in my life. Um,
was it something very deep, like that didn't really work as you planned? Was it something very important and something like specific? Do you want to
yeah,
share more about that?
sure. So this was when I was in my early 20s, and
Mm-hmm.
everyone around me, all my friends, were kind of figuring out their life already. They did their bachelor's and master degrees, getting like establishing families. And I was still kind of feeling very confused about what I want to do in life. And I felt this um, indirect pressure from society, like you're supposed to finish school and university,
Mm-hmm.
and like this is how everyone is living. Like you should follow that. And I was really struggling with fitting into that kind of way of moving ahead in life. So that was kind of um causing me a lot of stress, not kind of fitting in anywhere. And so at a certain time, I figured out like what I want to study. And once I figured that out, like I knew like, okay, 4 years of study, then I come back
mm,
home and then I'll get like a wife, I'll get 3 kids, I'll buy that house, I do this and this. And suddenly like I had my life figured out, you know. I was missing this
mm,
for so long
mm,
and like finally now I know, like I found my way. But the
mm,
universe kind of had its own plans for me. So it was kind of a slap in the face when I didn't get into that school because that
mm.
same year they had like a restriction for Norwegians in the school because there were so many Norwegians applying. So my application was denied. And so that's when I like my whole kind of life plan was crashing. All
Mm.
this excitement and joy that I had felt for finally finding my way, my purpose, it all kind of just crashed down on me. Um, and that's the moment where I just realized like I have to do something drastic to make up for
Mm.
it in some way. And so like my first thought, my first response was next year I'm going to be happy I did not get into this school. That was like my first
Mm.
response. And so that
Mm.
became my mission. Like I have to do something in order for me to feel happy next year that I didn't get in. Like I have to make this worth it somehow.
Is it at that moment that you decided to take that journey all around Norway just by foot,
Yeah,
or
kind of.
something has happened in between?
No, well, I didn't like knew exactly what to do. I just knew I'm going to do something drastic. And I
Mm-hmm.
was with my friend at the moment, and he was kind of in the same position. So I remember I was asking him, like, you want to do some crazy shit this year? And he was like, yes, let's do it. And so we spent the summer kind of planning or thinking what to do. We were thinking about buying a van and just traveling around Europe, surfing, snowboarding, just exploring. But then both of us knew somebody before who had walked across Norway, and we were felt like um, very inspired in some way. But when I remember when I was studying, I was reading this blog of like a friend of a friend who was walking, and I was just looking at these amazing pictures and the stories he was sharing on his blog. And I'd never for 1 second considered that I could do something like that. I was just kind of
Mm.
envious of him being a person that could do something like that, and I wasn't.
Mm.
But because all of this, um, my life plan falling into pieces, I was somewhat desperate, and I think that was
Mm.
what gave me the courage to do something like that. So we
Mm.
spent like half a year saving up money, buying new equipment, going for like weekend trips out into the wild.
Mm.
We would just kind of after work, we would just pack our car and just drive without any plan and just kind of do like right or left. Let's do right, and then just
Oh.
drive. And at a certain point, like we had to sleep, so we just went out of the car and we would just kind of find a place to sleep and just kind of practice the unpredictable situations. So we were kind of causing unpredictable situations, and yeah, so we were having a lot of fun practicing for half a year before we actually started this journey.
Oh, that's beautiful. So it was actually something you you literally took the time to plan ahead. I thought that was just like you wake up in the morning, you just say, I'm tired of this life and I'm just gonna walk around. But you actually plan it and you plan to do that.
Yeah,
That's
we planned
that's
for
really beautiful.
some. Yeah, I mean, um, this is it's becoming like a common hike to do. It's about 3,000 kilometers, but most people they go from
Mm,
south to north. But we wanted to have like an extreme experience, so we started in north in
mm,
the winter time, which is some of the most harsh climate on Earth. You know, we had no idea what
mm,
we were getting into. We just knew we wanted something like extreme, something that would really challenge us in ways. So it needs some planning for sure.
Yeah. And then what happened after that? So how many days did you spend walking around Norway? And when you come back, what's happening in you? And what's the next step? What's the decision? What do you want to do? And what do you think about at that
Mm.
moment?
And so the journey took us 6 months. We spent the
Oh, wow,
first,
6 months.
yeah, we spent the first 100 days on skis, and the rest by foot. And like especially in the north, it was very challenging. We spent so much more time than we had planned. We'd never been that far north, either of us, before, so we had no idea what we're getting into. And honestly, I'm still kind of amazed that we're still alive because we were facing so many difficult situations, and our life was like, yeah, we were kind of, our mortality was being confronted many times during
Mm,
that
mm,
trip. And that makes you think about life in a very different way. Um, and not having like the luxury of hot water, a fridge, a warm like bedroom in the night, like all these things that we take so for granted. We didn't have any of that. Like we had to really work for staying alive. And
mm,
that really kind of put things into perspective. It really it changes you in ways that it's hard to describe.
mm,
So life becomes very, very real. Like you feel very much alive because
mm.
there's no like safety net catching you if you fall. Like you have to really take responsibility for yourself and your own life. And
So you basically didn't plan any emergency contact or any emergency in case
well,
something will happen.
yeah, we had like this um, satellite emergency thing with us. Uh, and I was kind of naive when we started. I was like, worst case scenario, we just hit this button and then all our problems will be solved.
I see.
But then I remember like I think it was like maybe a month in, and this was like the most challenging day by far. We'd been walking for so long, and our water was frozen. It was like a really harsh blizzard. It was dark. We were dehydrated, hungry,
Mm,
exhausted, and it was so much wind and like nowhere to kind of find shelter for the wind. So we had to, at a certain time, just take a chance and put up the tent, which is very challenging when there's a storm outside to put up a tent. So at that point, I was like, this SOS button is not going to do anything for us now. Like nobody's going to come to get us in this weather, in this position. They will come and get our
yeah.
body, you know.
Wow.
So that was like I think it was like a moment for me. Like I was like, there's like 50% chance that we will survive this.
Mm,
So that was like our first kind of confrontation with our mortality, I think, especially well, for me at least.
mm,
Um, yeah, so when I came back home after these 6 months, coming into this, stepping into like my old life, uh, it just felt so kind of empty and hollow, and like it gave me nothing. Going back to work, um, like all the things that I thought was so important, like I was chasing
mm,
a career, I was chasing good relationships, I was chasing money and beautiful house and these things. But when I came back home, I realized like I was way happier when I didn't have any of this, when I was just
oh,
by
wow.
myself
Wow.
out in the nature, right? That's
Yeah.
when I really felt like fulfilled. And so coming back into this life, trying to live that when nothing made sense to me, I didn't understand like why am I supposed to be here? Like what's the meaning of this? I didn't see any meaning of
Mm,
continuing this life. It was just so pointless.
mm.
Um, so that was kind of my existential crisis, led me into a depression. Um, and in this depression, that's when I kind of woke up a little bit and realized that it was not never about being in nature. It was about what was happening within myself when I was in nature
Wow,
and what's
beautiful.
happening
Yes,
within myself
yes.
when I am in society and these things. So I
Mm-hmm.
realized that for me to feel so great, I don't have to spend my life in nature necessarily. I can make
Oh,
those
wow,
changes in myself. I could feel at peace within myself, even though I'm in society. I can feel
beautiful.
joyful and fulfilled.
That's very beautiful. I just wanna kind of build a thought on what you just said because many of time we think that it's the society, the society, the world into quote has the problem. So we have to withdraw ourselves from the society or from the world. So we will, there's this new trend of people going to into nature to find peace or to be at peace or to move from the world to like a remote place to be like in this bubble, just by themselves with a
Mhm.
community of the same kind. But
Mhm.
from what I'm hearing from you, you're just saying that the real change or the real peace is not from the outside, but from the inside, right?
Yeah. So I think that's it's beautiful that people will kind of retreat and kind of do their own thing and kind of figure
Mm-hmm.
things out for themselves. I think it's very important. But if you want to make some changes in this world, like
Mm,
if you want to see some changes, running away is not going to help very much. It's better, I think,
mm,
to make
mm.
those changes
Yes.
within yourself. And once you find this peace within yourself, you can go
Mm.
into hell. Like you can go into the worst places on earth and kind of spread
Wow,
that energy,
beautiful,
you know? So if you want to
beautiful.
make
Yeah.
changes, I think start with yourself, figure this out, and then
Mm-hmm.
spread, you know? I think it was the Buddha who was asked if he wanted something about going to heaven or hell. And he said he had no interest in going to heaven. Like, what is he supposed to do there? At least in hell, he could do some changes. He could do some good. Because,
That's a beautiful thought. It's
yeah,
absolutely beautiful. Yeah,
yeah,
wow.
because
Yeah.
when you take care of this,
Mm,
whether hell is outside of you or heaven is outside of you, it doesn't matter because
mm,
you are in control of this. You make your own well-being. So then it's better
yeah.
to be in hell, and then at least you can help someone. Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful. I remember once I was talking with a friend who was thinking of building this, retreat or building this community away of the world where people can come and rejuvenate and, just be outside, just build a healthy community to quote. That is a beautiful idea. It's brilliant, but I was telling him that I'm the kind of person I will rather want to run into the world rather to run out of the world. Not because I want, just because, the desire of helping as much as many as we can, I
Mhm.
like drive us to run into. And what you're just sharing is beautiful. Saying that you cultivate the inner peace and the heaven which is inside you, you
Mhm.
run straight into hell and you make much differences. You bring peace and love.
Mhm.
That's absolutely beautiful. Yeah, that's so beautiful. So when you come back, and I'm very curious to know when did you started to think about yoga and how did you even get in touch with yoga and to think that, oh, yoga is the question or yoga is the answer for me.
Hmm. Well, it took me a while to realize, actually. I there was like a moment in my depression where I remember it was like a breaking point for me. I was laying in the bed
Mm,
and as I was doing most of the time, and I got a message on my phone and I felt like exhausted just by hearing the sound. I was like, ah, now at first I have to find my phone, then I have to read the message, and then I have to make a standpoint of what of the content. Then I have to answer the message, and then probably I get another message, and then I have to do the same thing over again. And I was just
mm,
exhausted by the thought of having to deal with just answering a message on my phone. And that was when I kind of realized, like, what's going on? Like, I can't live like this.
mm.
This is unacceptable. And I started this was way before I've heard about yoga and these things. Um, but I realized that my mind was quite chaotic and I wanted like a break. And so I was practicing um, getting like a larger duration of gap in between every thought. So like after every thought, there's like a small gap and then there's a new thought coming. I was kind of practicing making this bigger in a way, like practicing just calming down my thoughts in a way. So that's something that I just started to do intuitively. And then I realized like my body was feeling stiff and like, yeah, I just felt like I needed to stretch and kind of get energy moving in my body. And so I just started to do some stretches and kind of open up the body. And then I also realized like I need some good energy. And so I would buy like a smoothie machine and start buying a lot of fruits and berries and yeah, and getting like better nutrition. So these things I started just to feel more alive, more energized. So I did that, and I kind of came out of the depression. Um,
Oh, wait a second. You came out of depression just by eating better, having a lot of energy, and also like practicing like the little gaps in between your thoughts. Is that what I'm hearing right now?
well, yeah, kind of. I think maybe it's not so much about what I did, but the decision I
Mm-hmm.
made within myself. Like, I don't want to be in that state anymore. I'm going to change that. And by acknowledging that, I became conscious of my own troubles. And in that acknowledgement, I created some distance between like me and the depression. Like the depression was something I was going to handle. And in
Mm,
that separation, kind of, there is some freedom happening already. Like, because I'm not absorbed in the depression, I'm observing it rather, and I'm dealing with it.
mhm, mm.
Um, so I kind of just made a decision, I think, like I am making a change. Like I refused, I don't accept living like this. So I made
Mm,
that decision and then I did what I felt I needed to do. And instead of being kind of absorbed in all these thoughts about not finding meaning in life and very depressing thoughts, I was now like my mind was more focused and determined on finding meaning, finding purpose, finding fulfillment, finding joy. Uh, so I think that also has a lot to do because when we're in depression, we're kind of circulating in those same thoughts, those heavy thoughts, and creating those
mm,
emotions. but I made a decision. I'm changing this pattern, and I started to focus on what I wanted instead.
Oh,
So
that's beautiful. And
it,
I'm
um,
really curious now to know, like, how did you move from practicing yoga to like becoming a yoga instructor? Like, what was your motivation in between that? Because it's one thing to start and to practice yoga, and
mm,
it's another thing to actually want to help other people doing that. So, what was your motivation
yeah.
in becoming an instructor?
So in this, I kind of started doing these things intuitively. I still didn't know about yoga really.
Mm-hmm.
And the kind of um, the what to say, the traditions of spirituality that was, I think, more dominant in
Mm-hmm.
my hometown at that time. I think was more like shamanism and that kind of work, like plant medicine.
Okay.
Some people have brought that into the city, and that was kind of very alive at the time. And so I got in touch with some shamans and started doing work with the shamans. And
Mm-hmm.
went to Brazil in the rainforest, and I did some work with them there. And well, this was over a few years, and in that time, yoga was kind of always in the background, but I didn't understand it. Like, why is yoga and spirituality, why does that have to do with anything? Like, where's the connection? I didn't see the connection. People were stretching their bodies, but like, so what? I didn't. But it was always kind of in the background. It was, I
Yeah.
saw that there's some connection with spirituality and yoga, but I didn't really see what it was. And then there was, I became very curious of it. And I remember I was actually looking for a Tai Chi retreat. That's what I wanted to do. And as I was searching online, this yoga teacher training came up,
Mm-hmm.
and they were already like the teacher, the owner of the studio. She was also like a shaman. She did like healing and stuff that I was already like kind of interested and curious about.
Was
So
she was she Norwegian too, or was she from another
no, she
country?
was actually, she's beautiful, beautiful older lady. She's from Germany. The school
Oh,
was in
okay.
Thailand. So I just kind of knew it into like, and just knew like, this is where I'm going. I don't care about the Tai Chi retreat. I'm going to this place. So I just
So
booked my
by
flight.
that time, what I'm listening from, by that time you're now more into finding a way or a path into spirituality, right?
Yeah, you could say that. I was curious about yoga. Like I knew there was something to it. I didn't really understand it because I was just seeing the postures, you know. I was just seeing people like
Like
bending their
the
bodies. I didn't really get it.
yeah.
But I knew there was something there. So I went to Thailand and I did the yoga teacher training, not to become a teacher, but
Uh-huh.
to understand what it's all about. Like, what's the deal with yoga, really? Like, and I was so amazed because what we see, especially in the West, of yoga, it's such a shame because it's just like a small fraction of what yoga is.
Mm,
And we've made that little thing very glamorous and kind of
mm,
sexy, you know, like these
yeah.
postures on the beach and like everything is very, yeah. Uh, and I realized like this is what I've been kind of doing, looking for. Like I've been doing these things, and now I understand that there's a system for it. Like people have been doing these things for thousands of years. Why
Mm,
didn't anyone tell me of this? Like
yeah.
I was so amazed, and I just could not come back and not share this because for me this
Mm,
was like mind blowing. I've been searching for this for many years, and suddenly I realize there's this beautiful system and so many tools and techniques. Um, so when I got back home, a friend of me just asked me if I needed a studio. She had like I just got like an amazing deal, so suddenly I had a studio
Mm.
like effortlessly, and it just kind of started to happen there. I just want to share like more of a holistic aspect of what yoga is.
Yeah.
So that's
Well,
how
thank you
I
for
got into it.
sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of that, we're gonna dive right now into what yoga is or what yoga is not. I'm really, really curious of that because me having like a religious background, like from a Christianist religious background, yoga like was pictured for us as something like demonic, like something that you shouldn't even try, you shouldn't even read about because it's satanic, it's demoniac, every bad thing that you can think about. And I'm so excited now. I want to know, what's yoga? What's first? Let's start with what's yoga is not. What's not yoga? Like, what are the ideas that we have around yoga that you have discovered uh with time that yoga is absolutely not this or not that.
Well, um, like I could say that yoga is not like a fitness practice, but
Okay.
also that would not be true because, you know, achieving fitness by practicing yoga, that's a consequence. It's not the goal, but it's a
Mhm.
consequence.
Okay.
Um, so what we're seeing in the West today that we're some of the consequences of practicing yoga becomes the whole thing. And
Mm.
that's, I think, where the main misunderstanding comes from. You get a fit and healthy body from practicing yoga. This is just like a small consequence of it. But we have made this the whole thing. Like this is it. But this is just like something that happens as a consequence.
Mm.
But I think how you explained your podcast is in many ways how I would explain yoga, which is a bit
Mm.
fascinating because you say that we are so different, um, but there's something that unites us all at the same time.
Mm.
And so yoga is about peeling off all these differences, all these things that we identify with. We have this limited identity. If you
Mm.
identify by skin color, like race, beliefs, these things, you have a very limited identity and you will crash with a lot of people because they are different.
Mm.
But as you peel off these layers of identity, you realize that being human is so much more than a set of beliefs, a certain body type. You're so much more than emotions and energy. And once your experience of life goes beyond these things, you
Mm.
realize that actually the very essence of me and the essence of you are exactly the same thing. The very
So
essence of
from what
me,
yeah,
yeah,
sorry. Go ahead, sorry.
yeah, no, it's just that when you realize what your essence
Mm.
is, you will recognize yourself in everything
Yeah.
because what you are is essentially everything, everywhere.
Oh, wow, that's beautiful. So if I understand correctly, yoga is basically finding your true self, like letting go of all this false perception of who we are and finding who we are really. So if we consider that about yoga, meaning that yoga is not only the posture, because me, for instance, I'm I don't know anything about yoga. So what I know when I hear yoga is just the postures. And what I've heard from other people is that yoga it's about releasing the tensions or fighting anxiety or stress. So from what you're telling me, yoga it's more than that. So what is really yoga, or what is yoga more than just the practice? Is yoga more than the posture? what is yoga actually?
Um, yoga translated means unity. So yoga
Wow.
means that which unites everything. The
Oh, wow.
practice
Okay.
of yoga is what takes our consciousness to that level so that we realize that we are united with everything. There is not any me and you here, there is just this oneness. So
Mm,
yoga means unity, and the practice is what takes us to that unity, to takes our experience to that unity. So deepen our understanding of what and who we are, and all these things that you have to, like, if you want to bring your consciousness to this level, first you have to get rid of all your distractions. It's very
mm,
difficult to understand who you are when you're in a room and everyone's screaming, so you have to kind of rid yourself of all these distractions. And the body has some distractions. If it's not fit and healthy, you sit down and
mm,
you want to meditate, it's going to be very distractive. You're going to have like cramps and aches, and your back is going to kind of fall down and hurt. So exploring your inner dimensions can be very difficult when your body is screaming. The same goes with your mind. If your mind is very active, how do you perceive what's behind the mind, beyond the mind? So you have to find ways to calm down the mind. So when the
mm,
mind is still, when the body is still, when your energies are aligned, only then can you really perceive what is beyond your body, your mind, your energy. So all these physical postures that we do is just to prepare the body to sit in stillness without getting distracted.
mm.
So this
Beautiful.
is just
So,
a small part of the
yeah,
practice.
I remember last time you were telling me about, if I remember correctly, you were talking about like 7 stages of yoga. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that? And tell us what is that stage that we really think is yoga, but there is more, as I can hear from you, right?
Mhm. Yeah, so the yoga and the practice of yoga is thousands of years. The stories goes back to like 10,000
Mm,
years ago. The first evidence that we have of yoga goes back to, I think, it's like 6,000 years old, something like that. So before any religion came, we have evidence of the yogic practice. But until 3,000 years ago, the teachings and the knowledge that was spread about yoga was very chaotic.
mm,
There were so many different schools doing different things. There were no like proper system of it. And so about 3,000 years ago, a sage named Patanjali, he kind of collected the essence of the yogic practice and he made it into a system. He wrote what's known as the Yoga Sutras.
mm,
Within the Yoga Sutras, you have the 8 limbs of yoga, which is very like a systematic approach to a yogic practice.
mm,
So it consists of, 8 steps. Um, so the first step that we look at, if you're going to start like this yogic practice, we start with the easiest. The easiest is to kind of reflect over your lifestyle, how you live. So these are first yamas, the 5 guidelines for things that you should avoid doing. The
mm,
first and most popular of them is known as ahimsa, which means non-violence. So anyone
mm.
who known Gandhi, Gandhi
Beautiful.
was a very dedicated yogi, and for him, ahimsa was his main thing. And
Mm.
you can see, sorry, what happens. Sorry, when you dedicate
It's okay.
yourself to just nonviolence, like what he achieved by himself, by just being fully aligned with this practice of nonviolence. because it's not just about avoiding hitting people, it's
Mm.
violence. What is violence? Causing harm to someone.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's not just physical harm. Like if you have a harmful thought about someone, that's also causing harm in some way. It's the direct harm of um, well, being violent, and it's the indirect by maybe supporting something that is doing something violently. As we see today, like if you go in the store, a lot of the food that you'll buy, it's not going to be very ethically produced, maybe, or the clothing that we buy, it's not ethically
Mm.
produced. So non-violence, it's also not supporting those things. So to fully integrate non-violence, very few people are able to do that. Very few people are able to fully integrate the non-violence. Um, so it sounds very simple, but it's so huge, kind of. And so we have these five guidelines of what not to do. So non-violence is not of them, and then you have you should not steal, you should not be greedy, you
Mm.
should be kind of not seeking pleasure. Um, I could talk about this for a very long time, but I'm just going to do it shortly. But you
Okay.
have these five things that you should avoid doing, and then you have the next step is the niyamas, which are five things that you should be doing. So these are not rules. These are, you have to see these as like you don't. There's no one like telling you like you're bad if you do this, or you're good if you do this. It's just if you want to achieve this, and this is the way, like this is the path. So there are no like
Mm.
rules. Nobody is like judging you for being good or bad if you do anything.
So it's a little bit different than most religion or what is in religion. Like you should do this, you should do that, or if not, there is a big guy who is going to strike you, or the
Yeah.
consequences of what you're doing are going to lead you either in a good place or in a bad place. So it's absolutely different. It's more like if you want to see this, do this, right?
Yeah, if this is what you want to achieve, then this is the way.
Mm.
So it's just like showing us the way. And it's like of all the students I've had and I've been teaching this, I've asked them like, does it make sense to you? And everyone is agree, like it makes sense that you should not cause violence or be violent, cause harm. You should not steal, you should not lie. Like these things, they feel very true to us, like very intuitively, like these are things that we should not be doing. And
Mm.
if you want to create peace within yourself, if you go around stealing from people, being violent, and you sit down trying to meditate, that's just not going to happen because you're
Mm.
going to feel like shameful, guilty, maybe regretful. So this is just like if you want to achieve some inner peace, like these are some steps. So you have the like the yamas, niyamas are more like lifestyle, how we interact in our daily lives. Then
Mhm.
the next step is the asanas or yogasanas, which are the postures that we see. This is like the common thing. So then we start to work with the body because the body is fairly easy to work with. If you want it to move in a certain way, it moves in that way.
Mhm.
So then we start working with the body because when we work with the body, we are indirectly also influencing our mind and our energies. That's why people feel very at peace after a workout or like a yogic practice, like of the postures. So then we start working with that, preparing for meditation. Next step is pranayama, which is working with the energies. It's it's takes a little bit more effort than the body, but it's still easier than working with the mind. So then working with the energies, which is often used with like breathing exercises. A breath and life force are very close connected. So by like anyone can just do it. Like if you take a deep breath,
Mm.
instantly you feel the effects of it, right? So very powerful
Yeah.
practice. Yeah. So in that way, we can expand our energy, our life force, and then we're going into pratyahara, which is you can say like the first step of meditation. Pratyahara simply means to withdraw from the senses. So going
Mm.
into a state where you are not disturbed by your external environment. Like just before falling asleep, you kind of forget where you are and you don't hear the sounds or you're not aware of your sense perception. So this is the first stage into meditation.
Mm.
And from there, we go into the practice of a concentration, because then the challenge is going to be to stay there for some time without falling back out. So concentration is an essential step if you want to meditate. There is no meditation if you can't concentrate. So then concentration practices. Once you're able to concentrate for some time,
Mm.
then you'll get into meditation. Meditation in this sense simply means that you um, you get in a state where you may still be aware that you're meditating, but
Mhm.
your perception of time is gone. Like
Mm.
if you open your eyes and you feel like you've been gone 5 minutes and you look at the time and it's been an hour, that's a sign that you've been in meditation. You may also get some visions and hear stuff like, yeah. So sense perception
Mm.
and perception of time and space, these things will kind of just fall out. So you're in a very deep place. This is the seventh step. And then the last one is the goal, which is samadhi. Samadhi is when you kind of dissolve into what you focus on in the meditation, like the the subject and the object dissolves and becomes one. So from duality, you go into oneness. And
Mm.
this is the goal of the yogic practice, to come into this unity, as we talked about.
Oh, that's extremely beautiful. So, if I understand clearly, yoga it's like wrapped up in between spirituality, morality, and the physical part, right? Like it involves everything at the same time. So, I want us to talk about it's yoga attached to one religion because I see your background, very nice background by the way, and I see how you dress. Let's say I'm a Christian or I am a Muslim and I'm really attached to my religion and I hear all these beautiful things about yoga and I want to do yoga, but I'm afraid, is it another religion that I'm getting myself into? Or yoga is neutral or yoga is attached into religion? We have heard a lot. You mentioned Gandhi some while ago, and we know that Gandhi was Hindu. Like, is a yoga a Hindu practice? Is a Buddhist practice? Is it a religion? Or it's neutral? Like, what is the place of yoga and religion?
As I said, yoga became before any religion came. It became yoga was here before Jesus was walking this planet. Yoga was here before Buddha was walking this planet. So
Oh.
yoga was here before all religion came to be. Uh, in my like how I see it, um, language. If I tell you something, then you have a perception of what I say.
Mm.
We have all these stories of religions. When I look at it, when I look at Christianity, I see like this is exactly what we talk about in yoga. When I look at Hinduism, when I look at Buddhism, whatever religion I look at, I see like this is exactly what we're talking about in yoga. It's just a different dress. It's a different
Mm,
costume. The words are just sounds, but the meaning behind the sound or the words is the same. You understand? So
mm,
yoga unifies all religions. It's just different ways of putting different words, explaining things in a different way that kind of resonates with you. So it's just kind of what kind of clothes are you wearing, basically.
I
But
see.
so
So,
many within religion, there are so many
yeah,
misunderstandings as we take
yeah,
things literally. We don't
yeah.
see what is meant behind those words. What's the profound
Mm,
wisdom in these words? So that's
yeah.
why I think so much conflicts between religion and even in religions, like people are disagreeing, even if they both are Christian, because we see like again we just have like a very small understanding of it, and then it doesn't resonate with your neighbor's belief, and then we start to argue.
Yeah, interesting. But in yoga, you have like a lot of practice, and I see the sign on your forehead. Like, is it something that is compulsory, or is it a choice? Do you choose to do that, or it's something you should do? And the way you dress, and I don't know, and maybe you have a lot of practice and song, and during your meditation, is it something like I can choose not to do, or is it a little bit like rituals like in religion, like is it compulsory, or what if my religion doesn't allow me to do this ritual or not? How do I bring the two? How do I make it work?
Well, the essence of yoga is to understand who you are, what you are. So if
Mhm,
somebody else comes and tell you you should do this, you should do that, then you're not going to find yourself because you're going to act
mm,
from other people's views and opinions. So in yoga, there's not going to be anyone telling you you have to do this or you have to not do that.
mm,
Everything is a choice, and we should find that um, that should really come from a place from within. It should not come from anyone telling you to do something. You have to find those ways for yourself. And within yoga, I probably just know a fraction of the practices. There is so much. It's
mm.
such a vast space of practices and tools and techniques. So we have to kind of find what resonates. But there are like um, essentially there are four branches within yoga because we as human beings we perceive life in four different ways. It's through the intellect. So we have what's known as gnana yoga, which is yoga for the intellect. We have karma yoga, which is yoga through the physical body. We have bhakti yoga, which is through the emotions. And then we have kriya yoga, which is through energy. So
Mm,
depending on who you are, you might have more benefit of practicing bhakti yoga, for instance, or someone else maybe have more benefit of practicing gnana yoga. Like a very intellectual person may benefit more from gnana yoga than bhakti yoga. So depending on who you are, there are different practices that would be more beneficial to you.
yeah.
But
So
nobody's going
that
to tell you what
I
to do.
beautiful. So I understand that yoga literally focus on the being, on the human being, on oneself and the other, like finding myself, removing all these layers that are not me, and making sure to function into the society and doing good to the other, like non-violence or, this kind of thing that you have to do. Is it really what I'm getting from yoga?
Yeah, like once you realize that the trees are just an extension of your lungs, you're not going to
Mm,
chop down the forest, you know? When you realize that your neighbor is essentially yourself in a different costume. You're not going to be
Mm.
violent with him. You're going to treat him with love and respect. So essentially, as we start to realize that the familiarity with things, that we can recognize ourselves in other things, we start to behave differently. So yoga is not really about morality, because morality is following a certain set of rules.
Mm.
If you have spirituality, you don't need those rules. You shouldn't follow those rules, because then it becomes a very intuitive, becomes a very conscious understanding of how to live.
So basically, oh wow, that's beautiful. I really like that. Instead of following the rule, we should pursuing, like not following, but pursuing the awareness inside us. When the awareness flows, we don't need to follow the rules because it flow like naturally from us. We know, as you said, when I realized that my neighbor is an extension of me, that we are all one, I don't want to hurt him because it's basically a part of me. That's really beautiful. And you mentioned before that yoga came before religions and everything. And I see how beautiful it is. Like I can hear what you say about yoga. There are so many beautiful things that I could, identify, which are the same in the Bible, like which is my background, which is the book I've been kind of studying for some time. That's good. Very good stuff. I
Yeah, I
really
just want,
enjoy it.
yeah, can I add something? Because
Yes,
when
please.
when I explain yoga to people, depending on their background and their understanding, I would kind of explain a little bit differently. And
Mm-hmm.
you were talking about like the singing and like the things that I put in my forehead and stuff like that. And so I just want to add, like, there is a very scientific explanation for everything that we do. For instance, with the chanting of mantras,
Mm-hmm.
the Sanskrit language was made in such a beautiful way that the vibration of the word causes a certain effect in the body. So when you utter
Mm-hmm.
a certain word, a sound, those vibration creates an atmosphere in the body. And the meaning of the word describes the atmosphere that's been creating in the body. So the word shanti, for instance, which means peace, chanting shanti creates peace. So this whole language is created based on the effects of the vibration of the sound. So when we chant all these mantras, we're creating waves of sound in the body, and that creates a certain effect. It puts you in certain states. So there's a very scientific way of seeing the yogic practices as well. And
Oh, thank you.
what's really fascinating is that Buddha himself, he was talking
Mm-hmm.
about atoms. This is 4,000 years ago, before the microscope. He knew about
Mm.
the atom. And if you read in like the ancient Vedic scriptures, you realize that they knew about the universe long before the telescope.
Mm.
So there's some very fascinating stuff going on here. How they have this knowledge of how this whole universe comes together. And now just in recent times, more and more the scientific, like the Western scientific methods are catching up with what yogis have been known for thousands of years, which is very interesting. The chakras, the energy system, is now just recently being confirmed by the Western scientific methods. That's very interesting.
Oh, wow, thank you. And that's beautiful. You literally went ahead of me
Okay,
because
sorry.
no, 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 that's beautiful. It's perfect and it's the right time because what I wanted us to speak about next was yoga and science, like what
Mhm.
is like the merge point, or where is that point where yoga and science meet, and you're literally explaining, you have already explained perfectly. I've been watching a lot of podcasts recently about trauma, like healing trauma, mental health, and there are a lot of practitioners like psychiatric and psychologists, um, even like just professional about about this whole field of mental science, and they're always mentioning yoga, like amongst their solution for breaking the cycle of trauma, of healing traumas. They are mentioning, obviously, there will be session with a psychiatric or a psychologist or your therapist or whatsoever, but they're also mentioning yoga, like the
Mhm.
practice of yoga, how you have to look inside you and
Mhm.
just look within those emotions. And that's beautiful. It's actually really beautiful that you're mentioning how science it's literally proving or proving how yoga works. Do you have more to say about that?
Yeah, no, this is like we're going to just see more of this coming in the future as well, how the science will back up the spiritual methods of resolving traumas and achieving
Mm,
like inner health. But the problem with Western science compared to like the spirituality is the Western science is based on this physical world. Like it has its limitations because it can't pass what you can't observe in this physical world.
mm,
But in spirituality, spirituality just means like that which is beyond the physical. So the science of the spirituality is much deeper. Like the Western science will never get to that point because we're just looking at what's physical.
mm. Yeah. So speaking of that, would you say that yoga is for weak people or yoga can be fun and yoga can be for youth, with this society where everything goes very fast, very, TikToks, Instagram. How can we bring that spirituality and finding ourselves to this generation? You know what I'm saying? Not for the people who are already kind of aware, or people who are dealing, like many people are dealing with trauma, finding themselves, but actually they are looking on the wrong side, trying to find meaning and purpose. Like, how, according to you, can we make yoga something that can be accessible to everyone without thinking that it's weird or it's only for a certain class or some people?
So if you look at children, those
Mm.
are the best yogis. You know, they came
Oh,
they just came from the source. They were recently united with everything, and then they came into this duality. And you just see how they're exploding with joy, and excitement. They don't go around looking for meaning in life because they don't have this emptiness yet. It's
wow.
only when we feel empty we start to look for meaning. But they are so fulfilled and so joyful and happy and living life to the fullest. And I think something that we're doing wrong is trying to teach our children how to be. It should be the other way around because
Mm.
as we grow up, we become anxious, depressed, stressed. We just become like full of suffering. We're so miserable, and we're trying to teach our kids our ways. So we should
Mm.
rather look at the kids. What are they doing that I am failing at? You
Sorry,
know,
just sorry
really.
to interrupt you. This is just so beautiful. As you had mentioned before, like when you look at Christianity or other religion, like you're literally quoting the Bible in other ways. Like when Jesus says, like the kingdom of God is for children. Like
Mm,
you should become like a child to
mm.
perceive the kingdom of God within you. I just wanted to mention that because that's so beautiful, and what you're saying is just so interesting. Yeah. Go ahead,
Yeah, and
please.
I didn't read the Bible. Like I don't know these things, but I am just speaking from my understanding, and it resonates with
Mm,
Christianity. So, as I was saying, it's just different ways of describing the same things.
mm,
But yeah, what I was saying, like when you look at how children are kind of taking life in its fullest, And then as we grow up, we limit ourselves. I think a lot of my work is to bring people outside of their comfort zone. You see, as we get older, our comfort zone is shrinking. And
Mm,
when you look at older people, like they would sit in the same chairs every day, they would eat the same food, more or less. They would talk to the same people, talk about the same things. They are they are making life a very limited experience
mm,
because of the comfort and convenience and like the safety, the predictability of it.
mm,
So we are neglecting life, and then of course we become depressed. But if you look at kids, like they're just playing, having fun. This
mm.
is what we should be doing. Like this is what it's all about. We should not be taking this so seriously. Like we should look at everything in a playful way with the knowledge and the wisdom that we gain as we grow. But if you think about it, we're so happy when we're kids, like we're so joyful. As we grow older, we should just enhance this. We should get better at living. So we should be totally ecstatic as we grow up, right? But we're doing
Right.
something wrong.
Yeah.
We're going in a different direction. So we have to go back and like, what are the kids doing? How can I implement more of this into my life and start to learn from all the mistakes and grow instead of shrinking into this very limited experience of life that is so miserable.
That's so beautiful. You actually remind me one day back home in Cameroon, I was walking with my niece once. I was just walking back like from my mother place to my brother house. And while I was walking with her, I was holding her hand. Suddenly we reached a point where she saw a bunch of kids on the other side. They were played on their yard or something like that, and they were like singing and being joyful. And at the same time, I saw my niece just going there and singing and being joyful. And when they look at each other, like the group of kids looking my niece, and they were all joyful and dancing together. But those kids didn't know each other at all. They were just like simply enjoying the moment of joy and laughter. And I realize how much us right now will be thinking about a lot of things. How I look, who are those people? What are they gonna think about me? Like, as you said, just the innocence of the moment, not thinking of much, just being present that moment, see other people, identify and just taking the time and enjoying that with them. We definitely need to learn more from the kids rather than them to learn from us. That's so beautiful. Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that. Well, if we have to talk about, we have so many things to discuss about it. I really hope that we will do more of this sometimes, because if we have to discuss that now, we're gonna be like a week or a month. We will never finish. So before we wrap it up, I want to ask you, what is your long-term vision with yoga? Like, how do you perceive or see yourself with this practice for a long term?
Well, as a spiritual seeker, you're always looking to align yourself with truth,
Hmm.
to shed off these layer of false identity. Um, so as I was talking about earlier about samadhi, like the last stage of the 8 steps, also known as mukti or nirvana. Mukti means liberation. Nirvana means to cease to exist.
Hmm.
It's the same thing, but it's mukti is a more acceptable and kind of feeling a bit more good to her. But essentially, they mean the same thing. It means that the false self will cease to exist, and that causes liberation. Um, so this is the path of yoga that I'm also following and pursuing.
For yourself and for also all of your students, isn't it?
Well, what I'm realizing more and more is there is no there's no difference. The work I do in myself is the work I do in the world. So if I want to make any changes in the world, I essentially
Hmm.
have to make those changes within myself. So it's
That's absolutely beautiful. That coming back again for the Bible, that's the book I know. I don't know the Quran or whatever is used. There is this beautiful quote of Jesus that says, "Love your neighbor as you love yourself." As you said, I'm trying to make like a kind of similarity, though try to find like a point to join this stuff. Like you cannot give to your neighbor if you don't find it. And it's beautiful, as you said, the work you do for yourself, it's literally doing that for the world. That's so beautiful. So what are like the basic exercises or things you can share for somebody who's listening to this podcast who has realized, oh, yoga can be interesting. Like, what does that person can start to do, like before joining a class or following you or whatsoever? Like, what a person should start to do? Is it like an exercise or breathing something or something? Yeah.
we should become aware of what is happening within our minds.
Mm,
If you start like all of the suffering that we experience, all the anxiety, stress, depression, anger, jealousy, shame. The problem is we're absorbed in it. But if there's a moment where you realize, where you can say to yourself, I'm feeling guilty, in that moment, you become conscious of what is happening. And when that happens, you create this distance from being absorbed in it and observing it. So we have to observe what is happening within ourselves. When we feel anxious, instead of being trapped in all those thinking about everything that can go wrong, acknowledge I feel anxious. What is happening within me? And then we can take a step back and observe what is happening. And with that comes an amazing freedom already. And also then
mm,
we can actually do something about it. Because when we're absorbed in our own suffering, there's really nothing we can do. We have to take a step back before we can actually do something about it. So we have to realize that all of our suffering, we are creating it ourselves. All the
mm.
anxiety,
Beautiful.
depression, the stress, the anger, the jealousy, the shame, it's self created, which can be tough to hear, but it also means that then you can actually do something about it. Because if you tell if you say something to me and I become angry and I say I'm angry because you said this, then I have to wait for you to change for for me to fix this anger. But
Wow.
if I can
Yeah.
realize that you said this and I went into reaction, I made some meaning out of it that created this feeling of anger. And that also means that I can do something about it. So it's about taking responsibility of our own well being, not blaming anything or anyone for how we feel, but taking the full responsibility of it and then
Beautiful.
start to observe what is happening here. How
Mm,
can I manage? And then we also often think that the more advanced practices, the more powerful it is. And so we always want to do like the most advanced things,
mm.
but just taking a deep breath in, just taking a deep breath in. It's such a powerful practice. So taking responsibility for how you feel, observe what
Mm.
is going on, and just take a breath and relax. My what I would say.
Oh, wow. That's extremely beautiful. Thank you so much, Lars, for this beautiful moment of sharing. I've learned a lot, as
Thank you.
always, when I share with you. I like, let's say somebody's listening to this and wanna follow you to learn more about yoga and everything. Where can I find you? Where can they find you? how can they get in touch with you, or where can they see your work?
So you'll find me on Facebook and Instagram. If
Mm-hmm.
you search up Darsh Yoga. I also have a website, darshyoga.no. It's
Mm-hmm.
in English. Um, I have some material, some content, some free stuff out there, and I'm just kind of making some big changes on my website. So a lot of new free practices will come, as well as there are some courses that you can take to advance your practice as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Lars, for this moment. Um, I hope we will meet again on this kind of, interaction just to share experiences.
Absolutely.
Well, what should I say, or what should we say for the word of the end?
Well, I want to say thank you for inviting me to this podcast, for having the honor of being your first episode. And I think the work that you do with the
Yay!
podcast is, well, of course, it resonates with what I'm doing. So I really support what you're doing. I think it's great. So finding those things that unites us all
Mm,
in a time where there's so much focus on the differences, I think it's
yeah.
essential. And thank you for the work, really.
Thank you so much, Lars. So we're just gonna say, until now, see you next time, okay?
Sure.